The Fog Eater. The town of Grey Pines had always been quiet, nestled between thick woods and an eerie, never-ending fog that rolled in like clockwork every night. No one could explain it, and most locals had grown used to the mist that swallowed their streets and homes. But recently, people had started to disappear. Each morning, someone new was missing, with nothing left behind but a single footprint in the soft earth outside their homes. Mira, a young reporter new to town, had heard whispers of an old legend, a creature that lived in the fog, an ancient, nameless thing that consumed the souls of those it marked. Some called it the Fog Eater. Intrigued by the stories, Mira began asking questions, determined to find the truth. But every person she spoke to quickly shut their doors or crossed themselves, muttering that the Fog Eater should not be disturbed. Mira's curiosity only grew. Late one night, she decided to walk the town in the fog, hoping to catch a glimpse of whatever was stalking the streets. She grabbed her camera and flashlight, stepping out into the thick, soupy mist. Her heart pounded as the cold fog wrapped around her, muting every sound and limiting her vision to a few feet ahead. As she walked, Mira noticed strange things. A flicker of movement here, a whispered voice there, a shadow slipping past the corner of her eye. Her flashlight beam darted through the fog, but every time she turned to look, she saw nothing but swirling mist. After hours of wandering, she was about to turn back when she heard it, a low, rumbling growl that seemed to vibrate through her bones. Mira froze, her breath catching in her throat. She turned slowly, her flashlight cutting through the darkness, and that's when she saw it. A pair of glowing eyes, peering through the fog. They were set low to the ground, unblinking, and filled with a hungry, ancient intelligence. Mira felt her heart hammer in her chest as the creature took a step forward, revealing a monstrous, twisted form cloaked in the mist. It was tall, its body seeming to shift and ripple like the fog itself, with limbs that stretched unnaturally, and a face that was only partially there, fading in and out of sight. What are you?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. The creature tilted its head, watching her with an intensity that made her skin crawl. She took a shaky step back, but the Fog Eater moved forward, matching her step. Its mouth opened slightly, and a misty vapor flowed out, swirling around her feet. She remembered the stories, the tales of the Fog Eater consuming souls, taking whatever it wanted. Every instinct told her to run, but her feet felt rooted to the ground. Her eyes locked on the creature as it moved closer, shadows of long, sinewy limbs stretching through the fog. Desperate, she raised her flashlight, shining it directly at the creature. It recoiled slightly, but its eyes never left hers. A low, hissing sound filled the air, and Mira realized it was laughing, mocking her. "You're just another lost soul," it whispered, its voice a hollow echo in her mind. Her hands shook as she fumbled for her camera, snapping photos wildly. But each time the flash lit up the fog, the creature seemed to vanish, only to reappear a step closer, its presence pressing down on her like a weight. The air around her grew colder, and she could feel the fog tightening, wrapping around her like a cocoon. In a desperate move, she turned and ran, her footsteps muffled by the fog. She could hear it following, its heavy, dragging steps closing in. She raced down the empty streets, her breath coming in ragged gasps as the fog grew thicker, swallowing everything around her. Finally, she stumbled into her small apartment, slamming the door shut and locking it. Her heart pounded as she backed away, watching the fog press against her windows, as if searching for a way in. For the next few days, Mira stayed inside, feeling the creature's eyes on her even when the fog wasn't there. She tried to tell people, tried to show them her photos, but every image came out blank, as if the creature had erased itself. Then, one night, the fog came early. Mira felt it settle around her apartment, thicker than ever, pressing against the walls like it was alive. She could hear that same low, rumbling growl vibrating through the floor. She held her breath, backing away as the shadows began to gather in the corners of the room, darker and colder than the rest of the fog. And then, the whisper returned. "Come into the fog, Mira." She clutched her flashlight, her hands shaking, but the light flickered and died. The creature's eyes appeared in the darkness, glowing with a hunger that chilled her to the bone. With a final desperate breath, Mira ran for the door. But as she opened it, the fog rushed in, swallowing her whole. The next morning, her apartment was empty, with only a single footprint left behind on the doorstep, sinking deep into the soft earth.